You've read books and highlighted passages, but when it's time to write, your mind goes blank. We've all been there. Robert Greene had the same problem while writing the 48 Laws of Power, so he built a system to capture and retrieve insights instantly. But this system wasn't new. Some of history's greatest thinkers from Cicero to Shakespeare relied on a similar method. It's called a commonplace book, and today I'll show you how it works and how to build your own, so you never struggle to start a project again. So, what is a commonplace book? In its simplest form, a commonplace book is a book of quotes categorized by topic or theme under a common place or header. While it's having a resurgence in popularity today, extracting quotes from authors is an old practice popular among Roman literate society. The original purpose was to collect writing from authoritative sources to use for your own speeches and writing. The Romans called the skill the art of excerpting. It was said that Pliny the Elder never read without taking extracts, and used to say that there was never a book so bad that it was not good in some passage or another. During the Renaissance, Erasmus of Rotterdam published De Copia, arguing that effective writing requires an abundance of rhetorical devices and, more importantly, source material. He would group quotations and extracts under common headers such as religion or politics to use as ammo for building rhetorical arguments and authoritative writing. This system of building your own commonplace book for professional use became a regular part of elite education programs across Europe. And if you're wondering how I know all this, it's because of the quotes I've collected in my own commonplace book. That's the biggest benefit I've experienced by keeping a commonplace book. It's an easy to reference, curated bank of knowledge that helps me write and generate material. When I decided I want to make this video sharing how to start a commonplace book, I pulled together my notes for the topic and immediately got started. It makes the blank page much easier to overcome when you have research ready to go. But there are many more benefits to the practice. First, when you read with the intention of extraction, you focus more deeply on the material and notice things that you would otherwise gloss over. Seeing the passages you select next to each other helps you draw new connections between ideas, providing more nuance and context. The physical labor of copying by hand helps you internalize the meaning of the quote and cement its place in your web of knowledge. And finally, a commonplace book acts as an external memory, freeing up mental real estate to contemplate and generate new ideas based on the material. Now, there are a ton of different methodologies and systems for keeping a commonplace book, some more technical than others, but I want to share the system I use that I learned from researching Robert Greene. So when he was writing his first book, The 48 Laws of Power, Greene needed a system for organizing all the stories and information he was collecting. He turned to using a note card-based system for categorizing his research by theme. Greene found note cards to be more flexible than notebooks for a system like this because he wasn't limited by the linear nature of a notebook. Theoretically, he could add thousands of note cards to a single topic or theme without ever running out of pages. Note cards also allowed him to pull specific notes together while working on a project and then return them to their permanent home once the project was finished. Robert Greene eventually taught this note card system to his apprentice, Ryan Holiday, who went on to write over 10 best-selling books and countless essays on Stoicism. During a talk in LA, Holiday said, "It's a process, and that it's hard is the reason it works. Digital tools remove the difficulty, and by removing the difficulty, they remove the point. It loses its value." So this handwriting is a healthy friction that helps you be more discerning about what is important to know and what can be forgotten. And these modern writers aren't the only ones who use a note card-based commonplace book. Carl Linnaeus, the father of modern taxonomy, was so overwhelmed with the resources gathered in his lifetime that he switched to an index card-based system because he found notebooks to be too restrictive. The modular nature of note cards allowed him to draw new connections between species that he had previously overlooked. Now, whether you use note cards or a notebook doesn't really matter. It's up to your personal preference. But I want to walk you through how I decide on headers, some best practices, and tips for keeping a commonplace book that will actually be useful to you in your work. I think examples are the most helpful for explaining something that can seem overwhelming at first. So let's just jump into how I actually go through the steps. The system has 3 steps. So let's talk about the first step, annotation. So when you're reading a book, you want to go through and focus, pay attention to the stuff that's really resonating and the things that you think are going to be useful to you in the future. Things that really stand out, things that grab your attention, things that seem important are the things that you want to highlight or underline, whatever your preferred method is. Now, I know some people are really precious with their books and they don't really want to mess them up, and I can even be that way sometimes too. Most books, I don't mind just marking up with pen marks and highlighters. I don't really care. But some books are a little bit nicer and maybe you want to take care of them. And in that case, what I like to do is a sticky note system. So what I'll do is I will just put a little sticky note with a note to myself. Maybe I'll be referencing something that I want to pull from here, a quote or a passage, or sometimes it'll just be a reminder of what resonated with me here. They're more for references, and it takes a little bit more work to figure out what it was that I thought was important to note on the page. The nice thing about doing it like this, though, is that you don't end up actually messing up the whole book, and when you're done, you can even pull these out so that you have a nice fresh copy and you can pass it along to somebody that you might think finds value out of the book or whatever you want to do with it. Now, if I am not using a sticky note system, what I'll do is I'll actually just mark up the book itself. So here I have this book paper, and what I do is I just fold the corners of the pages to let me know that I marked something there. And so if we open up to these folded corners, you can see that just with simple pen, I'll kind of margin out the paragraph that I think is interesting. And you can see sometimes I get really excited. I put these huge chunks here. Like, I'm not going to copy all that out. There's no way that I can't fit all that onto a note card. So what I'll do is I'll kind of see if I can gather the gist of it, maybe condense it down to the most impactful sentence, and then reference this page number so that I could come in here and check it out and get a more detailed version of the story or the information in the future when I need it. The second step is to let the book sit. After a month or two, you want to go back and carefully select which passages to hand copy to your commonplace book. Now, the reason you want to let the book sit for a month or two is because the stuff that you were coming across originally is going to seem really novel and new to you. So you're going to be tempted to highlight and underline a bunch of things that seem exciting at the time, but when you come back after 4, 6, 8 weeks, some of that stuff might not seem as important, and it takes a lot of time and effort to hand copy these notes. So you do want to be discerning with your judgment and make sure you're carefully extracting the correct passages that are going to be the most useful to you. And that's something I want to touch on real quick, is that when you're creating a commonplace book, I think it's really important to think about the purpose of the commonplace book. If you're just doing it because you think it's like this cool trendy thing to do, and maybe it'll be really cool to have all these quotes collected, that's fine. The only problem is that that might seem to be a chore after a while. The reason I keep a commonplace book is because I do a lot of generative work. I write a newsletter, I make videos like this, I have aspirations to write books in the future, and so by building up this commonplace book, I'm creating a self-education program as well as developing a body of research that I can use to generate material in the future. So for me, there's a strong purpose, because this is the thing about creating a commonplace book and taking detailed notes like this and reading all these books, is it's very time consuming and it can take a lot of effort. And if you don't have like a real purpose for all this effort, it can seem very unimportant to do. And the trap with life is that everything always seems super urgent and the important stuff tends to fall to the wayside. Building up a body of research is very important, but it's never going to be urgent. There's never like a deadline where you need to have all these note cards ready, right? There's never going to be a deadline for you to go through and read a book and take extensive notes and extract impactful quotes. But it's important that you do it, because if you can build up this body of referenceable material, you'll be able to generate work with way greater ease in the future. When you go to sit down for that big project, you'll have a bunch of material to start with. You'll have authoritative sources, you'll have references for everything, and you'll be well prepared. Ryan Holiday talks about how it's his default. Whenever he's not doing some sort of important, urgent work, or he's not busy with his kids, he'll just kind of sit down and write down a couple note cards real quick. He's got 5 or 10 minutes to kill. He'll just knock out a couple note cards and move on with his day. All right, so that's enough about reading and annotating. It's pretty simple. Basically, you just read constantly. You take notes while you're reading. You just mark up stuff, highlight stuff, and then you let it sit for a month or two. Now let's talk about how to actually structure the note cards. You only have so much space on a note card, which is nice. This is a benefit. This is another one of those healthy friction things where this prevents you from writing down entire pages of information. You're only able to write about that much. Maybe you could use the backside if you need to, but for the most part, most of your quotes are going to be like one paragraph, couple sentences, or maybe even just, sometimes it's literally just a quote. Like here's another quote from Pliny the Elder: "Not a day without writing a line." That's a nice little reminder that like, hey, you should be writing just a line a day if you can. That's another benefit of keeping a commonplace book, is sometimes these quotes are just helpful reflections, just things that you want to keep top of mind, that you want to be reminded of as you go out through your life. A line like this, I'm probably not going to use it for work very often, but when I see it, I'll be reminded that it's very important to just take small action towards the larger goals I have, even if it's just a single step a day, right? Not a day without writing a line. That could be not a day without writing a note card. And if I just do one note card a day, I'm going to build up 365 over a year. That's going to be over 1,000 after 3 years. That's going to accumulate. That's going to compound. It's going to make my future work so much easier to do. And the third and final step is to write down the header, the author, and the source of the material so you can accurately reference it as needed. So let's talk structure. At the top right corner is the main header that I use. So for this note card, it is extended mind. I use that header as a Way to reference anything, book, note-taking, just anything where you're taking ideas and externalizing it into the world. There's this philosophical question of where does the mind end and the rest of the world begin? And it's called the extended mind. Now, I don't know if I actually believe in the philosophical argument that the extended mind theorist put forth, but I like it as a header. It just kind of categorizes the type of note I want to take. These are all externalized thoughts and ideas by other people and myself. What I also will do if I want a little bit more like a subheader is on the left side, I'll put something there as well. So on this one, the main header is extended mind and my subheader is commonplace book. So now when I'm sifting through my note cards, I know, okay, this is about extended mind subjects, and then specifically it's about commonplace books. So it's not about writing, it's not about note-taking, it's about commonplace books. It's very important to make sure you mark down the author of the quote or whoever said it, so Roland Allen, and then the source, which was from his book, The Notebook, and the page number. So when you need to check your facts, or if you want to make sure that you got the quote right, and you want to reference something, or maybe you want to see what this quote came in with its context, its full chapter context, you can go to the page number. This makes sure you checked all the boxes of like scholarly due diligence, right? So you're not plagiarizing people and misquoting them and making sure you're being accurate with your references. So common header, subheader, author, source, page number. Now for the excerpt itself, what I do is I put a quotation so that I know this is somebody else's writing and not mine. And I also use this font. So I use a 2-font system. You don't have to do this. This is something I developed on my own, but I use a 2-font system. So whenever I see this font, it's like a printed faux serif font, I know it's a quote. This is the font I use to discern between my writing and somebody else's writing. I only use this font for headers and quotes that I'm writing down. Let me show you another note card to show you the difference. So on this note card, we have the common header, extended mind again, but the subheader is Martin Luther King Jr. So I know this is about a specific person and the way that he extended his mind. And here I have a quotation mark. I've got the author, Jillian Hess, and the source is from her noted Substack. This was an article she wrote. It's a great Substack if you guys are into note keeping. She's awesome. Anyway, so I used this faux serif font to quote. So I know that this was directly from her Substack, but then these bullet point cursive notes right here, these are all mine. And I know they're mine because they're written in cursive. So sometimes, I just want the note card to be a quoted source, but other times I have notes that I'm just kind of trying to summarize in my own words, and I'll go back to that Substack to get the direct quote from her if I need it. So you summarize some things in your own words, and I like to use the 2-font system to kind of keep things separate. Now, how does this work on an organizational level? Well, this is one of my note card boxes right here. And it may look a little messy and chaotic because I didn't buy like legit manila folders to separate everything. All I did was I took a note card and I cut it into strips to make these different categories. But essentially what I have in here is a index. And on the index card, I have all the different categories that are inside of this note box in order that they're aligned. This just keeps things really nice and organized and tidy. So let's say I want to write an article or I want to make a video about discipline. Well, I come in here, I've got all these note cards on discipline, right? I can pull these out and I can start going through them and start kind of trying to gather up the materials and see what is the message about discipline that I feel like I want to say something about, something that I think could be helpful to somebody else. And when you have all these note cards ready to go, I mean, it makes writing so much easier because I'm not having to sit here and sift through the internet and try to figure out what I'm trying to say. I'm not staring at a blank page. I literally have like notes and notes and notes to work for. And what's nice about a note card commonplace system is that, like I said earlier, you can keep adding note cards to the system and you never really run out of space. This whole box might end up becoming dedicated to one subject, one header eventually. This might just become my discipline box because I get so many note cards full of it. For now, it's all these separate ones. But if you were to try to do this system in a notebook, it gets a little confusing because you don't know how many pages you want to dedicate to a certain theme or topic. And so it could be a little like daunting to start because maybe you want to dedicate 2 pages to envy, but maybe you need 4, and then you end up getting started writing and you realize you need 300 pages dedicated to it. It's just kind of a mess. So I like the versatility, the flexibility of a note card system, something where I can kind of pull and grab as I need and add to it. Like I said, if I want to work on a project, I can just put them together into a single thing, and this becomes like my project file. So any note card that I think would be relevant to a video I'm making or an article I'm writing, I can put it into a project file, and then I know this project right here has all the relevant information that I'm going to need. And then once I'm finished with this, I could take the note cards and I just put them back in their permanent home. Now, one last habit that I keep that makes this whole commonplacing thing a lot easier is I keep a pocket notebook with me to help me not look at my phone as much and avoid digital distractions. So whenever I get that urge to pull out my phone and look at it, I have a loose commonplace book that I keep with me that I look at and reflect on the passages for. Now, I say it's loose because it's not technically a commonplace book because I don't categorize the quotes by commonplace or header. In these, I just quote things out as I find them interesting, and I just carry this notebook with me. So if I'm reading a book and I just want to make a quick extraction, I'll just quickly write out a quote, put the source, the author, whatever, and then just move on with my day. But I'll bring this around with me, and it helps me learn, and it helps me internalize quotes, learn from the masters of the past, and keep me off my phone. Eventually, all of these quotes get extracted out onto a note card and put into the more permanent system. So I would say you could call this like a catch-all, I guess. Now, I know the system can seem really complicated and complex. I just want you to know that this thing takes time to build. But when you start with the note card system, it is pretty simple. All you do is you buy a stack of index cards. The larger ones, I think they're 4x6 are the best. And just every day, maybe just take one quote from something you're reading, an article or a book you're reading, and just kind of slowly start to build up this database of ideas. And then eventually, over like a couple months, maybe a year or two goes by, you're just going to have this database of ideas that are just highly resonant and authoritative and useful to you. And you're going to be able to create works of art that you're not going to have to struggle with day in and day out because you're going to have the research side done. You're not going to have to worry about doing the research because the research will already have been done ahead of time. If you want to learn more about how I use these pocket notebook systems to avoid digital distractions and use my phone less, check out this video right over here.